Okay. Hello, everyone. We are conducting the first ever interview for the Resident Evil 30th anniversary interviews that I've actually started off with myself. But today we actually have somebody very, very special. Recently there was a documentary that was released called George A. Romero's Resident Evil, and it really inspired me to do these interviews. So today we actually have Brandon, the director of the documentary for the first interview. Say hello, Brandon.
Hey everyone.
So, Brandon, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a filmmaker from Pennsylvania. I served 6 years in the United States Marine Corps and 6 years in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. I've always had a love for film, and I've been trying for a long, long time in order to make film my career. And the documentary, George A. Romero's Resident Evil, is the first project that I've ever filmed as a director. It's the first project I've ever worked on. And while I was working on that, I also worked on a couple smaller things with other filmmakers and also produced an original horror film called Whistle to the Maples, which is in post-production and wrapping soon. And since the release of the documentary, I have gotten the rights to the video game Faith, which is made by Airdorf Games, and I will be writing and directing a feature film adaptation of that.
That's actually fucking cool. That is really amazing. And so basically the directing, that was your first official thing, and that's awesome that your first project was on a script that was only on the internet, and you were able to talk about George Romero, his life, and then talk about Resident Evil, and then talk about everything that happened with him with Resident Evil. I thought that was awesome.
Thank you.
It was really interesting. And then all the people you got to interview on the project, they're all amazing people. They're all amazing. And so basically, Brandon's documentary, like I said, is the reason why I'm doing this, is because I was a journalist and it sparked my journalism. So we're mainly focusing on Resident Evil, but we're also going to talk about the documentary as well. We'll flip back and forth, and that's pretty much it. So are you more of you're a gamer and a filmmaker, pretty much?
Oh yeah, I grew up with video games. I started with the Nintendo Entertainment System and Game Boy, and slowly moved on up. Probably since 1997,
Okay.
I've been primarily a PlayStation guy. PlayStation 1 is my favorite system of all time. I still own one, and I own a pretty large collection of PlayStation 1 games. I love even newer games to an extent, but PlayStation 1 and a little bit of PlayStation 2 is kind of like the pinnacle of gaming for me.
Okay. Yeah, so I was introduced to video games at 4 or 5. My sister, she pretty much showed me Final Fantasy X. So that was first thing I've seen. And then how I got into Resident Evil was my neighbor Larry, who was my best friend. He passed away in 2017. He showed me the director's cut of Resident Evil 1. And I was 4 or 5 when that happened, and I played it, and I wasn't scared at all. I legit wasn't scared. And I was interesting, and then I got into it. And then a fun fact about me too, I didn't know there were Resident Evil movies until I was like in 4th or 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't even know. And then, so it was actually interesting. And then I watched the movies and I was just like, what is going on? This has nothing to do with what the story is. And so I was just like, why the fuck are these being made? And when they got, I'm never going to forget this. So I saw the final movie in theaters with my buddy. And I'm pretty sure you saw it too. If you
I haven't. I have not. I gave up on them after the first three.
Okay.
I saw bits and pieces of the 4th and 5th one, and maybe like one scene from the last film.
So in the final chapter, Wesker, it's stupid. So it turns out, like, I'll spoil it because everybody's seen it by now, but it turns out like Alice the entire time was a clone. It's so fucking stupid, right? And then the original like person who was the clone of like Alice told Wesker, "You're fired." Wesker was standing underneath a door. The door fell on him and chopped his leg off.
And yeah, I did see that. You know where they got that idea for that scene from, right?
Which one?
It's the whole idea of the computer can't harm Wesker because he's an Umbrella employee until someone fires them from RoboCop.
That I did not know that.
From RoboCop.
That.
Yep, the climax of RoboCop.
That is
the original.
That is fucking cool. So when I was in the movie theater, because Wesker, he's got those superpowers basically from the T-virus. I literally screamed in the movie theater, "That's fucking bullshit!" Screamed it. And everyone in the theater is like, "Shut the fuck up." I'm like, oh, I can't speak my mind. So, yeah, I almost got kicked out of a movie theater. That was interesting. So, yeah. So, how did you discover Resident Evil in general?
Well, I got into Resident Evil because I had just gotten my PlayStation for Christmas in 1997. I had already been completely into horror. I watched Night of the Living Dead when I was 5, and then just continued to watch horror films as a kid. So I got a PlayStation, and then right around that time was the marketing for Resident Evil 2. Now, because I hadn't had a PlayStation before, I really wasn't paying attention to what was on PlayStation, except for what my friends had. And they were mostly into, like the light gun games, racing, a little bit of Tomb Raider. There wasn't, there wasn't really any horror games on PlayStation I could think of. So, and none that they were interested in. They liked other genres. So when the ads started for Resident Evil 2, it was like a amalgamation of everything I loved about horror. Because I'm primarily a creature feature guy. I love monsters, zombies, things like that. And I just immediately knew I needed to get this game. So one of my buddies ended up picking it up, and I played it and immediately fell in love. And it's a lot different for someone who had started with the very original game and then played the sequel. It's completely different when you start with the second game, and they allude to all this backstory. Like Claire looking for her brother Chris, and they're talking about a mansion incident. And there's mentions of Wesker, and so there's this kind of rich backstory that I wasn't aware about. I just knew that there was a first game and there was a character named Chris and Jill, and that was always intriguing to me. I had a very different introduction to it.
Okay.
Some other fans have. So I immediately went out, got to play the first game. Then I was getting the novels, the comics, everything imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
And then that all led back to me getting back into George Romero because Night of the Living Dead had scared the hell out of me. And I hadn't watched Night of the Living Dead in a long, long time because of it. So not too long after Resident Evil 2 came out, that's when the rumors started that George Romero was going to write and direct the feature film. And I was already aware of a movie because they had the sticker on the case that said one part in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I had decided I was going to go back and rewatch a lot of George's films just so I had an idea on what he would be with the movie. So Resident Evil kind of led to my reigniting my love for George Romero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he.
So yeah, and Resident Evil is one of the few video game series that I'm still a fan of to this day. That's still around.
Mm-hmm. So literally with me, like, I got introduced to it at a young age. I played every single game ever created, every single one. Even, unfortunately, Gaiden. Unfortunately. Reason why I say unfortunately, because I hated that one. That was my least favorite one. I actually had my dad run it over with the car because I hated that game so much. And so I got into George Romero. Actually, it wasn't like Night of the Living Dead or, it wasn't Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead. It wasn't the original Dead movies. The one that got me into George Romero actually was Diary of the Dead.
Oh, okay.
I love Diary of the Dead. That is one of my favorite George Romero movies because it puts in two of my favorite things: found footage and zombies. And then
that's really interesting.
Yeah,
I know a lot of the longtime Romero fans just can't get into it. And, I appreciate every film that George has ever done. But yeah, some people just can't get into it. So it's really fascinating to hear someone say that's my favorite.
The reason why it's my favorite also is because do you remember? I know you've seen it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do you remember the soldiers that show up onto the RV and take all the shit?
Yeah, they're also in Survival.
Yep, that's the reason why, because that's the direct sequel. And I just loved his filmmaking style, his everything that he does. Like, you can tell he has a personal hand in everything. And then he always has his favorite makeup artists, which I love. And I met actually somebody a long time ago at a Walking Dead convention. I met Greg Nicotero one time.
Mm-hmm.
And nicest dude in the world. I didn't even know he'd worked with him. I didn't know at the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, then, he started back in Day of the Dead.
Mm-hmm. And then I loved Tom Savini's work. Tom Savini is the greatest makeup artist on the planet, in my opinion. So,
yeah, I've met Tom a few times. I go out every year to Living Dead Weekend, which is held at the Monroeville Mall, where they shot the original Dawn of the Dead. I usually see Greg there, Tom. I've met them a few times. And a lot of the other people that have worked with George. So it's kind of a surreal thing to meet the people that you've been watching their films, their work for decades.
So with me, that actually happened to me once. So I'm a big fan of John Carpenter's The Thing. That's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And a week later, on my 18th birthday, I met John Carpenter right on my 18th birthday. And that was like, I was so starstruck because I watched his movie the week before. And then I had questions right in my head. And then he told me all the fucking shit that went wrong. And I thought that was funny as hell. And he told me, like, how he doesn't like Rob Zombie, actually. Because Rob Zombie, what ended up happening, I know we're getting a little sidetracked. That's what happens when you do interviews. You get sidetracked with certain shit.
Well, that was with the Halloween remake.
Yes. John Carpenter did not like them. He fucking hated them, actually. He hated them.
It wasn't so much that he hated them. It was the fact that Rob Zombie had called John to get advice. Because, he's remaking a classic film, and I guess Rob had a lot of respect for John's work that he decided to personally call him up and just kind of pick his brain. Well, John, I guess, doesn't really go for that kind of stuff, and he just gave Rob his blessings and said, make it your own. Don't worry about me. Make it your own. And I guess Rob took it the wrong way, and
they
like he was like brushing him off. So he was telling reporters that John Carpenter was cold towards him. And then when John got into it, he got pissed off and just said, I don't know why that piece of shit lied about me. He's like, I literally just said, make it your own. What I would do. He's like, look what I did with the thing. I made it my own, and it's a remake of a movie I loved.
That's what happened with Dawn of the Dead for the remake. Didn't they get like the blessing, and they made it their own thing for George Romero after his Dawn of the Dead?
I don't think they. Don't quote me on this.
Okay.
I don't think they ever asked George about anything, because I know George was always like, why are the zombies running? Like, that led to the opening of Diary of the Dead, when the one character is screaming at the character playing the mummy, saying like, you can't run. Why are you running? Like, it was actually a jab at the remake. But but Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, now they had actually, I know for a fact that they had actually checked in with George Romero and actually, had like actually let them watch it. And he actually did really enjoy Shaun of the Dead so much that he brought Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg into Land of the Dead, and they cameo as zombies.
Okay.
So there's like close-ups of them as zombies, where it's the sequence where they're going through like the lower income people that are like they have their little shanty town, and they have like take your picture with a zombie, and they're the two zombies that are chained up with the girl that's screaming. So that's how much like George always like pulls people to get into his films that he really likes. So I thought that was a pretty cool way of saying like, yeah, you two are really cool. Come be zombies in my film.
Yeah.
So but yeah.
And so what impact did Resident Evil have on you?
For Resident Evil?
Yeah, for Resident Evil.
I mean, one, it was just a massive amount of like creativity for me. Again, it was everything I love about horror packaged into one video game, and I love the tone of it. I love the there's a thing that it took me a long time to kind of figure out. It's not that I don't like newer games, but I feel like there's something that's lacking. And I really noticed that with remake of Resident Evil 2, which was fun, but at the same time, I just had this thing under my skin saying, like there's something missing. And I didn't know what it was until after I played the remake of 2, I went back and played the original 2. And I realized that everything about the series has changed.
Yes.
Literally everything. It's down to the fact that it doesn't even have color anymore. It doesn't have that vibrant color to it. They're trying to ground the games more into reality, Whereas the original games kind of have this weird nightmare logic, with like weird costumes, and the locations have layouts that don't make a lot of logical sense, and it just reminds me so much of like it's like you're playing through a nightmare.
Yes.
And now it's all everything has to be grounded in reality. There's less monsters, less monster types. The colors are desaturated, and you see a lot of people now complaining that some of the newer lead characters, they just don't look interesting. And I think that's part of the problem is each of the protagonists in the older games, they had a very unique look to them. Whether it was a certain color scheme or their costumes were just meant to make them stand out. And unfortunately, the newer games, including the remakes, they've been toning that down to the point where really the characters are just wearing like jackets and jeans, and none of them stand out and feel iconic. Like when you see Chris, Jill, Claire, Leon, they all feel like instant classic protagonists.
Yes.
They become iconic almost instantly, and I think that's missing with the newer games where, unfortunately, when you look at like Ethan Winters in Resident Evil 7, which I loved Resident Evil 7. I felt like it was a little bit too long, overstayed its welcome, but Resident Evil 7 was a really interesting return to the series. But when you look at the protagonist, like any conceptual promotional artwork for him, it's like he's wearing jeans and like a white button-down shirt, and there's nothing for him to stand out. It's far and away different from when you look at Claire Redfield in the original Resident Evil 2.
Like with Ethan Winters, he had like, we didn't know anything about him. We never knew anything about him. He was just put in the situation just like Chris, Jill, Leon, and Claire were. But what they did, what I didn't like about that is that he knew how to use a gun. And usually in situations like that, he'd be scared as fuck. And, the STARS, the RPD, the BSAA, the DSO, TerraSave, they're all trained with weapons. But Ethan wasn't. Mia was. His wife was. But, 7 was good. I can beat that game in like 2 hours, man. That's
I feel like there just wasn't enough with Ethan that I really love the game, but I feel like if they wanted to get back to that return to the earlier games, like they really needed Ethan to make him part of the local police department and make it that Mia is sort of like the person who's supposed to accept the bioweapon, like supposed to meet up, kind of like an Ada Wong type character.
Yeah.
And then she's using Ethan for cover. Like that would be interesting. And then Ethan is investigating like all the disappearances. It starts to feel like a return to the first game. And then at least then he starts having more of a background and a little bit more connection to all the events, as he starts uncovering like, oh, my wife is missing. Oh, she's now wrapped up in this missing persons case I've been working on. And, I feel like, and then giving him like a more unique look, as a police officer. And, at least then I think that would have helped out. And then if they just had more enemy variety, I think the mold was underutilized in that game where like I don't understand why it wouldn't be creating unique types of bioweapons that kind of take some of that biomaterial from its victims, animal stuff, and reconfigure them into new monsters. Like that was the perfect bioweapon to do that. almost like a callback to the G virus.
Yes.
It's like you really didn't get that much variety.
Mhm.
So I think just those things alone could have helped make the game feel better. Also, just get rid of the ship. I really hated the cargo ship. I felt like it was overstaying its welcome.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
I don't know anyone that doesn't feel that way. You know, it's like it needed to be one or the other. You know, it'd be it'd be kind of like if you played all of Resident Evil 1, but then you got to play in the police station. You know, like
Yeah.
It creates a weird vibe where it's like, okay, you just left everything, and then it turns out he like comes right back. He comes right back and he's on the property again. So it was, you know, from a pacing and just from a location point of view, it's just a very very weird thing. So, but yeah, they my entire rundown of Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, I'm a Twitch live streamer. I do Twitch live streaming sometimes. I'm a variety streamer, so I stream everything, but my main thing is Resident Evil. Mm-hmm. So I was in one of my live streams playing Resident Evil 7. I was doing what I called a complete live stream where I played the main game, Not a Hero, and then End of Zone. I did all those.
Okay.
So during the ship sequence, I remember I was going, why the fuck is this even here? Why is this here? This sucks. And I die easily. You only get a pistol and a machine gun. Why the fuck is this here? What the fuck is going on? This is fucking bullshit. That's literally how I was saying it the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people just did not like it.
Mm-hmm. So,
but you know, it's one of those things where I think everyone's going to have their favorite games in the series. I don't think there's too many people that love everything. Mm-hmm. There's different eras, obviously. And Resident Evil Requiem looks like it's going to be entering a new era again. So I'm, you know, that keeps it exciting for me because as someone who's been a fan of the series for almost 30 years, and the series itself is turning 30 years next year, it's nice to know that that the game is still around, and you know they're still making the older games available to play. And you know, I've been someone that's very much vocal that everyone should, like, if you don't like the newer games, cool, play the older games. If you don't like the old games but you like the new games, then play the new games. But don't be trashing each other about what you do and don't like, because you know, there's a lot of people who didn't come into the series until Resident Evil 4 or 5.
Yes.
And those things have their own style of gameplay. And I'm not a fan of them, but at the same time, I'm glad they exist because they actually did help branch out and make Resident Evil even bigger.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's, you know, do I feel like they took a lot of missteps? Sure. But at the same time, again, they have their fans, and I don't want to take that away from the people that are fans of those games.
Yes. So you literally just went into my next question, which is, what is your favorite game and what's the reason why?
Well, my favorite game is the very original Resident Evil. The very original. Not the remake, but the 1996 version. And the reason being is because I love the atmosphere. I love the simplicity of it. And I love the fact that everything about it just feels like a George Romero film. I like Resident Evil 2, the original, the 1998 version. That is the very first one I played. But I feel that it's a little bit too polished and a little bit it starts pushing in that more action direction. Whereas
Mhm.
the very first game is, it's a lot harder, especially if you have the
Mhm.
original version in the U.S. because they took out the aim assist
They did.
and
They
they
did.
kind of crunch, and they shifted some of the numbers, like some of the stats
Yeah.
in the game to make it harder. So I love the old Dark House concept, and I love
Mhm.
just the story of it, and everything about it just feels like George Romero.
Yes.
From the underground labs to that uncanny valley. I've heard people say that the older games have this like liminal horror feel
Mhm.
to it, like the back rooms where it's these empty spaces with like bright lights, and it just has this very weird vibe to it. And I'm like, yeah, that to me kind of reminds me of like George Romero when you look at something like Dawn of the Dead, where they show
Exactly.
the interiors of the mall and everything, like all the lights are on, the music's playing,
Mhm.
and it feels like a real location. And that was one of the things that I love the look of the remake of Resident Evil 1 remake, but at the
Mhm.
same time, it feels very
Um,
over designed. It feels very over designed. The original game feels more like a George Romero film where
Mhm.
it's a limited budget. They just went to a real mansion and shot this thing with whatever they had. And then the
Mhm.
remake of one feels like the big budget remake where they
Yes.
build an entire mansion and they have the really creepy lighting and everything just feels so over designed.
Exactly.
And some of the puzzles are different, whereas I have a lot of connection to how the original puzzles are that I don't necessarily like them as much in the remake. And some of the added additional stuff makes the game feel a little bit more complex than what I want. Just from a playthrough standpoint, I love the defense items. I love the crimson heads, and you got to
Oh,
burn the pot. But
yes.
for me, like I love all that stuff, and I love the fact that you actually have a real boss fight with the giant shark, the Neptune.
Oh, Neptune.
Like the
Yeah.
boss fights feel like more. They feel more involved, compared to
Mhm.
the original game. But at the same time, I have this. I love the fact that you can just hop into the original game and play through it. And you don't have all these extra elements that you have to worry about. You can just go in, drop into the mansion, and go play the game. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that a lot of fans have modded the game. So
Yes.
I love playing like Barry's mod, and I believe there's a Rebecca one, and
Yes.
there's a few other ones. So I love playing like some of these additional scenarios that fans have made. They're just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I love the original games to death. I even love the director's cut, not the DualShock, but I love the director's cut.
Yes.
And
See.
because you play the game so much, it starts becoming it becomes boring after a while because
Yes.
you don't keep that like same level of suspense that you had. That you're always trying to refine. You're always trying to recapture that same feel. And I love the fact that some of these new like mods and scenarios that fans make based on the original games, they kind of recapture that feel where suddenly it's like, oh shit, there's different enemies in this room, or oh, this puzzle piece isn't where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
There's some really really neat things with that. So that was one of the things I loved about the what was it, Deadly Silence for the
Yes.
For the Game Boy. Replaying that, they had a couple extra tricks up their sleeves when you play the enhanced version. Just the going into the library and there's a chimera in there hunting you.
Oh my god, I do remember that one. See,
yeah, it was just very neat to play something that just had a few changes and it made the game feel different.
Plus, the original Resident Evil had some of the funniest dialogue I've ever heard in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I've seen games that have had funnier lines than that.
Yeah, but Barry.
I always to what is it? Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks.
Yes.
Has a lot of dialogue where I guess they changed some of the cut scenes after they recorded the dialogue, and it just makes the characters seem ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah. Dialogue in Resident Evil 1 is pretty cheap.
My phone notification. So my phone notification was that was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich for like a year. That is one of the best. Like Barry, I'm gonna be honest. Barry, So we're gonna talk about the old script that they came up with too from your document when you did the documentary too. We're gonna talk about that as well. But his dialogue was so cheesy, but yet in the remake they still made him a serious character, but they gave him cheesy dialogue still.
Yeah.
And then we haven't heard anything from Barry in a long time. And then you got Revelations 2, where he is looking for his daughter, but he has his cheesy dialogue still, and it's funny as fuck.
Yeah, some of the lines are actually rather interesting when you look at the recordings. I don't know how, I'm connected to a few Resident Evil collectors that they have access to some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say, is that they have access to some really cool stuff that most people don't have. And I actually got to listen to some of the alternate dialogue that was recorded. I don't know if any of that's out there, but I got to hear multiple takes of a lot of the same lines, and it was very interesting to hear the actor for Barry doing the lines multiple different ways. So that was pretty neat. And it was the lines from the original game.
Yeah.
So obviously there's the lines that ended up in the game, and then there's all this extra stuff. And I think there was even the lines in there that were for scenes that weren't even made. Because one of the things about the first game is it's technically not even finished. It's kind of.
It was. You're right.
And it's not even just about the cut content. They literally were like, okay, we need to get this game out the door. It's been a few years, and they just kind of buttoned it up. But that's part of the reason why there's like all this like weird stuff regarding like things that don't make sense. You can kind of get a feel like it wasn't finished. I know like one of the big things was they were gonna have like little side things with Barry, because like in Chris's scenario you can play as Rebecca, and they were gonna do that with Jill's scenario where you could play as Barry for tiny bits. And one of them was, I think it was like Jill would get captured by Plan 42, and then you would have to go play as Barry, and you would go get the flamethrower, and then come back, and you would, have to attack Plan 42. So they had a couple different things like that where, like that was interesting, and then just being able to read some of the development of the original game, and like the stuff that they had planned, and it's neat. So it's neat to kind of gain access to that kind of stuff where you can sort of try and get inside of the creator's head.
Yeah. See, for me, my favorite game actually was OG2, because the reason why for OG2 was because, instead of just the mansion and the lab, you were in the city, the RPD, and then in the labs, and then you escape. Plus, like you said, they keep on changing the characters' backstories too. Like Leon's original backstory, if I remember correctly, his original backstory was his girlfriend broke up with him the night before. He got drunk, overslept, and he was late.
Yeah, that is. I'm pretty sure that is part of the actual backstory of the original game. It's just they implement it.
And then in the remake, they just had him stay away.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, that's a interesting change. I was like, oh. And then they changed his car coming in. I was like, oh, okay. But I still like in the remake how they kept the whole police car thing with the truck. I was glad they kept that in there. I was so glad they kept that in there. I was really glad.
An interesting thing about the original Resident Evil 2 is apparently the when they shifted over from the original prototype Resident Evil 1.5, they had actually had almost the entire game done. There's always rumors about whether it was 60% or 80%. It was more like 90%. They even had the CGI movies done.
Yeah,
and apparently, according to my sources, the zombies that you see in the CGI movies within the game, like when all the zombies attack Leon in his scenario, those are actually from 1.5. They just ported them over for the retail version, and that's and if you ever notice, like, none of the zombies in the CGI movies, in the FMV sequences, none of them are actually in Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even look like any of the zombies in 2.
You're right.
The zombies in 2 are weird. It's like, they always look like they're 7 feet tall.
You're right about that.
That was something I never really noticed when I was first playing it, and then when Resident Evil 3 came out, I was like, oh yeah, like the zombies are kind of weird. Like Resident Evil 1 and 3 have like very proportional looking zombies. They're very proportional to you, the player.
Oh my god!
But then, like Resident Evil 2, they're all like these giant, rotting, hulking people. And but yeah, it never made sense to me that the FMVs in like the turning head zombie in the first game, it looks like one of the zombies in the game, and the stuff that they have in Resident Evil 3, they look like the zombies models that they use in the game.
Yeah.
The Resident Evil 2 never had that, and allegedly it's because they were all ported over from Resident Evil 1.5 and some of the cinematics that they had planned for that.
Yeah. Resident Evil 3, the first ever video game that gave me nightmares. Fuck you, Nemesis. Fuck you, Nemesis. I mean, that fucking tyrant. Oh my god. Imagine being a 4 or 5 year old playing that and Nemesis keeps chasing you. That's good.
I enjoyed 3.
I did too.
I didn't like it as much as the first 2, but I enjoyed it, and I think I felt like, I don't know, I felt, again, I really liked it, but I don't know, there was something about the game where I just felt like, wow, this isn't as good as Resident Evil 2, and I don't know if it was because they didn't, like the previous 2 games, they each were kind of identifiable by their main location. And I felt like Resident Evil 3 didn't have that. And so I couldn't get a connection with like where the setting was, because it was just kind of all over the place. You're in a precinct, you're in a warehouse, you're in a subway station, here's a restaurant, now you're in a clock tower, in a city park, and it was just all over the place. And there was never really a point where they let you get lost in the city rather than like confining you inside of a building. And I felt like the game needed that. If they had either made the clock tower bigger, had more rooms to it, or if they just allowed you to have more access to the RPD, where you could kind of get lost in it again.
Exactly.
I felt like, but you can see how, like, if they had done more of the RPD, you would identify that game, the RPD, but you're already there in 2. So if they had kind of done the same thing with the clock tower, because I think the clock tower probably one of the most iconic parts of that game, and because it's the closest thing that you have to a new location that you can actually explore. So for me, I just wish there was like 40 rooms to that thing, so you could just kind of that would have been a nice change of pace. It's just you were constantly running so much from one location to the next that you never really got to explore like one location and really just absorb the environment. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And then, since we were talking about the movies, animated movies and stuff, we talked about the live actions. You don't like them, so you prefer the animated movies then?
I don't really think there's ever been an adaptation of the games that I've liked.
Okay.
Like the CG films were okay, but they're all action. They're just it's even the last one, the
Death Island.
Death Island. Death Island. It started off okay, but then there was so much time spent on the characters that there was not enough material there to really make it feel like Resident Evil for me.
Yeah.
It's like they just threw a bunch of zombies at it, and it was like, oh, by the way, here's this giant monster at the end.
See,
it just doesn't, to me, without a lot of the elements that make up why we love the games, it just becomes like that. That there was just all fan service. And
yeah.
I also have not liked how the game series has drifted more towards like drama and these complicated plots that frankly the series didn't have for the longest time. It was you just drop a character in a location and then you're getting most of your story through diary entries and reports, and you have to piece it together. But it's really just a survival game. But once they started coming up with like all these dramatic scenes and complicated plots, it's like, okay, you're losing. Like, I just want to explore this environment, solve some puzzles, and fight some monsters.
Yeah. See, with me, so a lot of people don't know, since you've been a longtime fan, before Degeneration, there was an actual short little film. It was a short film. It was called Biohazard 4D Executioner.
Oh yeah. That was part of it was part of a ride in Japan.
Yeah.
A little, like, roller coaster ride or something.
Yeah, and they turned it into a movie, technically. And I watched it.
Yeah, that was all the cinematics that were from that ride.
Yeah, like, so me with the animated movies, so I own all of them. And what I liked was, okay, so with Leon in particular, for Vendetta, what I liked is that his original origin story, he was an alcoholic. He was. And in Vendetta, they picked it right back up. I was like, what the fuck? Well, then again, I did the Phantom event for Vendetta, the one night premiere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got my wisdom teeth taken out 3 days before, so I was high as fuck in the movie theater off of pain medications. So that was a great experience. But
see, I never liked the idea that they added alcoholism into the games. And again, that's something that again, where it's kind of getting beyond like what the games were supposed to be about, where suddenly they're adding in like all of this dramatic character moments. Because they did the same thing with Chris. Like, Chris becomes an alcoholic at one point in one of the movies or games or something.
In 6.
Yeah.
Resident
and then
Evil 6.
It's like Leon was an alcoholic in the movie. Like, I just expect like the can't come up with anything interesting for the characters.
Yeah.
So they just keep reusing the same stuff over and over. I was surprised. I was surprised at Death Island that Jill was an alcoholic. It's like, okay, we get it. They're having problems.
Yeah.
You know, with PTSD, and it's like this is why you shouldn't be reusing the same characters.
Yeah.
Like you're running out of stuff for them to do.
Like if I remember correctly, in Vendetta, Leon even quoted, "What's fighting the living dead and the bastards that make them? What's the point of it all?" He quoted that. I was like, "Holy fuck!" He gave up, and then he sprung into action. I was just like, "Wait," he gave up, and then I'm just like, "Oh, okay." So, yeah, I mean, everybody's got their picks on what they like. You know, like I just
there's plenty of fans that love the movies, and you know, it's like I don't have anything personally against them. It's just you know, they're action movies.
Yes.
And the most I ever loved was the first 10 minutes of Vendetta, where you know it was inside of a mansion. It's got a team of soldiers that are getting attacked. I actually thought it genuinely creepy, and I was really hoping the rest of the film was going to be like that. And then I became disappointed when it was they had like a tyrant that had a Gatling gun, and then there's like a huge fight on a skyscraper, and it just started getting ridiculous. So
me and my buddy,
you know.
At that point with Chris and Arius, we made the joke of whose gun is it anyways. That's literally our running gag with that point, because it's like, what the fuck? But then what I loved about, you know, I loved about Vendetta, because that one's my personal favorite. I'll admit it, that's one of my favorites. What I loved is that they also promoted the Ducati in that to promote a Ducati. They promoted the motorcycle. And I thought that was fucking interesting. And then, you know, it's also one of the only vehicles that Leon's never crashed. That's the running gag with Resident Evil. But he blew it up. And the running gag for Resident Evil is every vehicle Leon's in, he crashes. I mean, come on. The police car, that was an accident. He didn't do anything in 4, but in 6, it was the police car and then the airplane. And then, you know, the animated movies, I'm glad. So what I liked about the animated movies also is that for D-Generation, they brought back Allison Court and they used Paul Mercier. That's what I loved. And I met Allison Court last year at the Comic-Con I go to. And we talked about it. It turns out she fucking hates the live action movies. She's with a passion.
Oh yeah, she only likes the survival horror.
Yes.
So I think Capcom stopped using her because of that for a while, because you know they were doing all the action games and stuff and the action movies. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
No, I'm not going to. Don't worry.
But I do know that I do know that she had told some people before that she's only interested in survival horror because that's, you know, where she got her start with Claire. That's what made it interesting for her, and that's what her fans kind of expect is the fact that there was a point where she stopped talking about Resident Evil after what happened, and she stopped talking about it. But when I met her, and I got my Blu-ray of D-Generation signed by her. And we actually ended up talking about the movie itself, about how it changed animated movies, literally. And when she was describing it, I was like, holy shit. But I was also having a nerdgasm at the same time because I was fucking nervous because her Claire basically was my childhood. Yeah.
And I was nervous as fuck. So before I met her, actually, I had a nervous breakdown in front of her booth. My buddy actually pushed me to go meet her. Literally went to go push me. And he did it. And then so they asked for like, oh, do you want the combo or the selfie or the autograph? And immediately I yelled combo. And I was like, fuck. That's a great first impression. Great first impression. But she was a sweetheart though. She's a real sweetheart. I'm not gonna lie. So since we're talking about characters, actually, who's your favorite character and why?
I would have to go with Chris Redfield.
Okay.
You know, that I just like Chris Redfield. You know, I thought Leon was okay, but Chris was more of a veteran. And then, you know, obviously now I'm friends with Charlie Kreslowski. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that I liked about Chris was actually established in the books and the comics around 1998. So it kind of fleshed out his character more. And I just liked that personality of him. You know, a lot of, you know, the games didn't really give him much personality, but a lot of the surrounding media around that time period did. I don't like Chris so much in the newer games, but the older version of that character, I mean, from the late 90s, I really became attached to it. I just thought, you know, he was a pretty interesting character.
I just didn't like that they changed his model for 7. I did not like that.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess they were just trying out something different.
His voice, though, David Vaughn, who voiced him, I liked his voice. Don't get me wrong. That was a good voice. But I think Chris has had the most voice actors out of all the characters. I think he has. Because when I did my test interview, I actually listed off all the voice actors Chris had. And he had the most. And the ones that are the most recognizable are Kevin Dorman, who was Umbrella Chronicles, and then Vendetta and Death Island.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that like Kevin Dorman was actually in Umbrella Chronicles. He was Chris.
Wow, but they're the most recognizable?
Yeah, it's because Capcom uses him more too. And then the most recognizable for Chris, the most recognized was Roger Craig Smith.
Wow. That's that's actually surprising because I would have thought either Joe White or from the remake or Scott McCullough from the original.
Yeah, a lot of people just recognize they put Roger Craig Smith as Chris Redfield because of 5. Well,
I can see because of 5.
And then also, a lot of people don't know this. Roger Craig Smith actually voiced Chris in Darkside Chronicles. A lot of people.
Okay.
Yeah, so you know how? Have you played Darkside Chronicles?
I haven't played a lot of the side games.
Okay, so basically,
did not play the rail shooters.
Yeah, basically the Chronicle games, they just summarize.
Yeah.
They summarize. I like how they did it. Like they also gave like some of the characters in I'll admit it, like some of the characters in like 3, for example, Carlos, cheesy as fuck. But very cheesy. Like Jill smacked the shit out of him still. But in Umbrella Chronicles, they changed his personality.
Yeah.
And then in 3 Remake, they gave him more of a better personality, not cheesy. He still had his funny lines, but they gave him more of a serious tone.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Roger Craig Smith was Chris in Darkside Chronicles when he had to team up with Claire.
Interesting.
And then they had Paul Mercier voice Leon in that. And a lot of people relate Leon either to Paul Mercier or Matthew Mercer. And then a lot of people know Nick now. He's voicing Leon now. And Nick is a wonderful dude. I've interviewed him in the past. I got a Streamly thing from him, and he remembers who I am every single time I talk to him, because we're friends on Facebook. Sometimes we talk, and we're actually going to meet for the first time in August, like in person. Yeah, it's interesting. So now you said yours is Chris, mine's Leon. Actually, I love Leon Kennedy. It's the reason why for me is because I can relate to him with the whole mindset he's in, because at the point of Vendetta, he's just fucking done with everything. And there was a point in my life where I was done with everything. I just wanted everything to be over. But, you know, I just remember what Leon said in Damnation, which was like, you know, we keep living on for the people that we have to. And Leon is quoted a lot. And, you know, when you look at Resident Evil, the star characters are Leon, Chris, Jill, and Claire. Those are the star characters. And then they had to, you know, and like you said, some people don't want to keep on seeing the same characters over and over. So they added new people. That's what they did with Ethan, Mia, you know, everything else. But yeah, mine's Leon just because I can relate on him. Okay, so let's get into the documentary now.
Okay.
All right. So since you worked with something that's related to Resident Evil, what inspired you to do the documentary itself?
Well, really, I was following the movie, at least George's version of it, the entire time, and you know, I remember when the first review of the screenplay came out, and then a year later the script leaked, and I just kept doing it for many, many years, and it was after George passed away that I used to run a YouTube channel, and I did a video talking about the screenplay. And, you know, keep in mind that George, you know, had to make up a lot of stuff because, you know, a lot of the information that we know did not exist at the time. I'd seen one person say they didn't like that he changed all the information about the mansion. And I had to remind them that, yeah, what you're complaining about did not exist back then. Like, literally no one in 1998 knew it as the Spencer Mansion.
Yes.
Like, at least when the games came out, they didn't have any of that. There was no George Trevor. Like, they had some information that was from, like, the S.D. Perry novel, but I think most people probably thought she made all that up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, you really had to be a hardcore Resident Evil nerd to know that there was, like, cut material from the first game that actually talked about, you know, Lord Oswald Spencer and George Trevor. So it's so yeah, like at the time, like he didn't have any of that. So he had to make a lot of that stuff up. And so is it a perfect script? Is it a perfect adaptation of the game? No. You know, obviously I wouldn't want, you know, Zach Krieger to write that script now in 2025.
Yeah.
But, you know, for the new one that they're making.
Yes.
But taking into account that it was 1998, longer than what some Resident Evil fans have been alive, and what information was available back then, and kind of the industry and how they treated video games. Like, honestly, overall, it's a very good script, and it's a very good early script.
Yeah.
He would have continued to revise throughout the entire process. And some of the stuff that fans do not like in it are also from the producers. You know, George had to answer the producers, and they had their notes, and, you know, he did not agree with all of them, but if he's just trying to get the movie made, you know, all things considered, he was doing the best that he could while dealing with people that just wanted a commercial product.
Yeah.
But I loved the screenplay as it was for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
It just reminded me so much of the video game in the sense that it was trying to recreate that same feel that I had when I first played Resident Evil 1. And there's a lot of George in there. I love the social commentary that he was starting to hint at. So at the rate of pass, I did this video and I didn't like it. You know, I was like, I could probably do better. So
yeah,
I started doing research, started talking to a guy that I had helped do some research with years prior, Robbie McGregor, and then we ended up joining forces, really combing through the archives of the internet and going through like back doors of like old discarded websites that don't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
And just pulling up all that information. And then we realized, like, wow, we could actually make a full documentary on this.
Yeah.
Because we knew that we were going to talk about George, and we were going to talk about the game and the commercial, because a lot of these things are stepping stones. We didn't want it to be like I've heard people say, like, you know, I didn't need you to cover the video game. Like, I know everything about the video game. Like, okay, not everyone does, and I want this to be something that no matter when you watch it or who you watch it with, they're not going to get lost. You know, it's just like telling a story. You have to give all the information to tell the correct story. And I wanted to make sure that, you know, if you were a Resident Evil fan, and you might know that George directed Night of the Living Dead, and maybe you knew that he was going to make a movie. You know, what I really wanted to do was kind of show you who he was as a person and why he was so damn important.
Yes.
And the same thing with the video game. I wanted to, like, for the Romero fans, I wanted to show them, like, hey, this is why the video game was such a big deal and why the movie was such a big deal at that time. And, you know, and so I layered the building blocks and to tell that story to eventually get to talking about the film itself.
Yeah.
So like all of this was just done because George's films had inspired me to pursue filmmaking. I wanted to do this project as sort of like a documentary about his legacy, pertaining to how this one unmade film and the inspirations that he kind of gave to the video games and how that slots into his overall legacy.
Yes. You know, your documentary, like I said, it points out a lot of things that I didn't even know happened. So, like, I didn't know Constantine Films. Yes, we are gonna trash talk. I don't care anymore. I did it in the in my test interview. I don't care. I didn't know Constantine Films bought the rights without even knowing what they bought. I did not know that.
Well, I mean, they knew what the main producer that was pushing for it, like, he knew what it was, but, you know, like Bernd Eichinger, like, he just understood that it was this popular game that his producers were playing. You know, and you know, they obviously understood horror, and they understood who George was because they had, you know, distributed Dawn of the Dead in Germany for Richard Rubenstein.
Yes.
Who was the producer on Dawn of the Dead. So they knew all this stuff going into it. But I think ultimately they didn't really, at least from what George was saying, they didn't understand what this game to film could be. And, you know, he felt like, you know, Bernd Eichinger just didn't care about what they were making, just as long as it made a lot of money. And to George didn't want to do that. He didn't want to. He was doing his best to take the material, elevate it, make it into something that could go beyond just a regular video game film. He didn't want to just cash it in, but he was trying to add in some character relationships and make it add as much from the video game as possible. And, you know, and kind of work within the confines that the producers were giving him while also trying to stay true to the types of films that he likes to make.
Yes.
And again, I felt like for that time period, for what he was given, and kind of the restraints that he was being given.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like he had done a really decent job. He needed to revise it, of course, but
Oh yeah.
But I feel like the worst part of the script is probably like the first 15 pages where he's,
Mm-hmm.
He has to try and establish things, and it's the most that's different from the video game. But it's like once you get inside the mansion, from there on, it just feels like the video game. And if you didn't read those first 15 pages where Chris is just a horse rancher,
An average
you wouldn't
dude.
know that. Yeah, like if you just like hopped in like 25 pages into the script, you'd like probably wouldn't even really notice.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's like one of the biggest things that a lot of fans have issues with. And I do know that the earlier drafts, Chris had his like actual background. Like he was a Air Force veteran who had
Mm-hmm.
gone back, was in sporting back and rescued this down pilot. He was kicked out of the Air Force. Like George had all that in there. And,
Yeah.
I think there's a shift with the producers where they're saying, no, we don't want all that. We want, let's make him like a Native American.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they were kind of like pushing that on him, and
Mm-hmm.
and there were rumors that they wanted him to have like mystical powers.
Jesus Christ, I did not know that.
So
my God.
So if that were true, then that explains the
Alice.
No. It explains the scene that Chris has with the Eagles, where he is kind of like in tune with nature. I think that was George's confession, where it was like, oh, you want him to have powers? Well, I'll just make him a guy that is like a conservationalist, and he has like eagles that he tracks, and he talks to them. But it's like a very, very ordinary scene that feels very, very weird and out of place, but that would really match up to that, because that scene is not in some of the earlier drafts.
Yeah, I also know your documentary touched on the guy who originally wrote the script, like not George's, but I forgot to.
Oh, McElroy,
yeah. His script.
I got to read the first draft McElroy script.
Oh God, that. Oh my God, so the part that like made me dumbfounded about that script, I'm gonna be honest, that script, I did not like it. I'll admit it, I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
The part that got me dumbfounded was about Barry. That's the part that got me dumbfounded. I was like, what? On his third divorce from his stripper wife who wanted his comic book and action figures. I was like, what the fuck?
It was very weird. Now, keep in mind, that was the very first draft, and the only, prior to the documentary and like I think one or two other people getting to go to the archive and like read the script, but at the time, like I was like one of the first people to read that fucking script in decades, because I went the second day the archive was open.
That's that's in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this script, like no one even knew it existed. They just thought it was lost. And when I found out that George must have been given a copy by Constantine Film just to see what the previous guy did, I went and read it. But the only information prior to that was the PSM article from June 1998, which has a completely different synopsis with some of the characters and like one or two other additional things. Like a lot of stuff is missing. So either they were given the wrong information, someone dressed it up for them, or what we think happened is there's another draft out there where they actually started making it feel more like the video game, because they talk about how in the it's when they started to shift towards the characters being undercover, I think,
Yeah.
Like Barry is retired and running a restaurant, and Wesker's in a mental institution. And
Yep.
there's a couple other things. Like all that is from the PSM article. So, and there's a like really small image of a cover page that I think Robbie had to like blow up, and you can see that the date on it is January 1998. So it's right around the time that Resident Evil 2 releases in the United States.
Yep.
And the draft that I read was from May 97. So it kind of lines up that that McElroy, he had his draft in May 97. Then like 6 months later, he had a second draft. And that's when Constantine was saying, second game came out and we realized our idea was dated. You know, like we've been working on something that doesn't feel like where the direction the game is going in.
Yeah.
So they were starting to already look at replacing Alan McElroy, and it was a few months later that George was starting to talk about, like, yeah, you know, there's this Resident Evil movie, and it seemed like they're like the wheels were in motion. They were turning in order to. They were going to bring in George to at least direct, but then I think it like shifted into we want to see what you can do writing the script.
Yeah. And
then it went from there. So
what jump started, I think, if I remember correctly, what jump started with George doing it was when he did the Resident Evil 2 commercial, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was back in September of '97 is when he directed it, and then it came out in time for the release.
Yeah,
in Japan. So it was he had done that. Capcom, you know, he was obviously picked because of his connection to Night of the Living Dead and creating the modern zombie, and obviously being an inspiration for the game. So it was this natural fit. And then Capcom seemed like they were the ones pushing to say you should get George Romero to direct the movie, and that was their number one pick, it seemed.
Yep.
So it was always like Capcom wanted George, and I think as Constantine kept working with him, they realized like this isn't fitting what we want for a film, and then they cooked up a story and fired him, and told Capcom that script wasn't good, we can't utilize this, and that kind of shut everything up. Because I see this a lot of times too, especially in comments where people keep hearing about the George Romero was going to make the movie, and the amount of people that keep blaming Capcom, and it's like Capcom had zero say in the film.
They never did.
And the reason for that, which is something that we couldn't really talk too much about, because you need multiple sources in order to get things legally clear. But I can talk about it because I have my sources and I have people like on camera talk about it. Is that Capcom had actually helped fund the 1994 Street Fighter movie, and the way I understand it, that was told to me was that they never got their money back. Like it was the Hollywood math. So they ended up when they wanted to do a movie with Resident Evil. They wanted to find a company that would make the movie without their involvement. Like they wouldn't have to put any money towards it. They wanted no involvement in Hollywood. And I don't think they've ever done anything in Hollywood since. It's always been a hands-off approach. They tried it back in '94, and they almost went out of business because of it. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize Resident Evil actually saved Capcom from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So with Resident Evil, that was the deal. Was they knew that they wanted the idea of like, we should still get movies made, but let's not have any financial involvement.
Yeah.
So the deal was struck So the deal was struck with Constantine that they would make the movies, but Capcom can't tell them what to do.
Oh, okay.
And I believe they had like a 4 or 5 year contract. They only ever had to renew the rights once, and that was when Paul Anderson came on board, because they were going to let it lapse. They were going to let it lapse. And then Paul Anderson had Samuel Hadida purchased the rights, so they renewed it on behalf of Constantine Film, and then it started over again. So Constantine Film has some sort of rights where they have to put a film into production every 4 to 5 years in order to keep the rights. So you can start figuring out very quickly why some of the entries have to be made. And that was that was part of the reason why we talked about the Fantastic Four film, is because it was sort of the same thing. They were going to lose the rights, and they were going to revert back to Marvel. So they hurried up and put a film into production and beat it by like a few days. A few days before the rights expired, that they put the film into production.
And then I believe Constantine had involved. They did do the involvement with Welcome to Raccoon City, I believe. I think.
Oh yeah. Constantine does everything with the live action.
See,
like literally, Capcom cannot do anything live action, and that's part of the reason why they have the CG films that they
because they get their own control over them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like they can actually.
Okay.
They actually get something out of it.
Yeah, because the director of Welcome to Raccoon City wanted it to be closer to the games. Wanted it to be. He wanted it to be. But what nobody liked about it was he mashed 2 games into one. He changed a little bit of the story.
Like, I could understand why he wanted to do it. I understand the inspiration.
Yeah.
He was trying to make something that was very John Carpenter, but it was one of those things where he was promised like twice the budget of what he got. And Constantine secured enough budget because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and then
I feel like he kind of became like a sacrificial lamb in order to keep the rights, because they literally had to make that movie. It didn't matter. That's
and
part of the reason why they pushed through even with half the budget.
If I remember correctly, they rushed the filming for that one. They rushed it completely because of the pandemic.
Yep.
They filmed it in, I think, the summer of 2021, I believe.
Fall. It was like September.
But then they filmed it, got in post-production, released the trailer in October, and then it just was in theaters in November.
Yeah.
And
it was like September of 2020. So they were pushing in like the first year of the pandemic, not even knowing like what things were going to be like. And a year later, at least. Yeah, but they made money on it because it was very. It did not make a lot of money in theaters, but it made money in January of 2022 on digital on demand and stuff. Because there were a lot of people saying, because of the limited marketing, they didn't even realize there was another Resident Evil film.
Yeah. So,
but again, it was that aspect of they just had to make it to keep the rights. And now you're hearing about how, Zach Krager, who, obviously is kind of a hot horror director right now.
Yeah.
He's pretty big. There's rumors he's being paid like $20 million, which sounds insane.
Yeah.
I don't think that's real, but I've seen the reports enough.
Yeah, he wants his own vision. He admitted that. See, what I like about some directors, if they come out and say they want their own thing with it, that's what I like. But if you're gonna say, oh, it's gonna be just like the game, like if I remember correctly, a lot of people did not like Paul Anderson's version of the first movie. If I remember correctly, it was mixed.
I mean, when it was announced, people were like very much against it.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it in the documentary, but there is actually a petition.
Yeah.
Like to try and like stop the production. Like, they wanted to do this like big petition with the fans to just kind of show Constantine film. Like, we don't want this movie.
Yeah, we want George back.
Weird. It was weird. Yeah, it was weird. Like it had to do with like the leaked plot summary and like the leaked casting sheet, and it just didn't sound like Resident Evil at all.
Yeah,
they're talking about supercomputers and like flesh-eating mutants. And,
exactly.
It just like
and
fans just kind of got pissed.
And then Johan Roberts, who did Welcome to Raccoon City, he tried to make it closer to the games. He tried.
Yeah,
but
he had. But everyone's going to go in and have their own vision for what they feel a Resident Evil film will be. Someone's going to be a fan of Resident Evil 5, and they're going to want it to be over the top action.
Yes.
Someone's going to come in. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Krager's only played like the newer games and he wants it to be more like Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, I think.
And then you'll have people that love the first games more, and it'll be like some weird gonzo horror film where like nothing makes sense.
Exactly.
It depends on what people's personal tastes are when they came into the series, and plus their own like I guess you could say like the sliding scale of how much they want it to be accurate to the game.
Yes.
Some people feel canon is more important than others. And it sounds like the new director, Zach Krager, he just wants to make a horror film. So he's already said he doesn't really care about the canon. He just wants to make a horror film. And it's going to be Resident Evil, but I don't know how much, it just sounds like they're going back to, we're going to make this film and it's going to say Resident Evil, but it's not going to be anything like the games, which that's fine. Maybe it'll be a really, really cool horror film, but, if there's nothing for the fans to really get behind, if it's just a zombie film, then that doesn't mean like all the fans are going to show up. So it's like now you got to fight harder to find that audience. You have to convince a general audience who doesn't even like zombie films at this point because they're so oversaturated that now you've got to convince more people to be like, why do I go watch a zombie film when there's 500 other zombie films?
Oh yeah.
So if the fans aren't even excited for it, they're not going to be telling the general audience like, oh yeah, this is going to be really cool. Even the fans are going to be like, I don't know who this is made for.
Yes.
So I hope it ends up being really, really good. I think the best thing would have been if, honestly, if Zach Krager had just shut the fuck up and not said anything.
Yes.
Right now, we don't, they haven't even released like an official plot synopsis. We don't know anything. We only know the rumors and like what couple things of leaked.
We don't know anything.
So for him to come out and just immediately say, yeah, I'm gonna get yelled at by the fans anyhow. So I'm just making a horror film, and I'm not worried about canon.
Yeah,
you are literally saying everything that the fans don't want to hear right now.
At least Johan Roberts was like, I'm trying to do this for the fans. I'm trying to. At least he admitted it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know. Like, it's another situation where, he probably had a vision in his head for what it was going to end up being. And I think at every step of the way, every stage of development, he just wasn't getting what he wanted. And, I don't know if like his full version would have actually been good. I know there was stuff that they had talked about the original screenplay that he had written, which I think it was like 120 pages or something.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like there's about 20 minutes worth of stuff never filmed for the movie. And I think one of the things they had, someone who had actually read it and talked about was just that scene where like the zombies are like breaking down the gate for the RPD. There's like 20 zombies in the movie. I think they had said that it was originally supposed to be like 200 zombies. Like it was just like the street was lined with zombies, and that's why they smacked the gates in, because there's just so many of them. And that's why they're like running from the police station. Like 20 zombies, like they had enough ammunition in the armory. They could have just killed them all, but it makes more sense.
Yeah,
think about this like overwhelming like Day of the Dead wave of zombies that are just filling every single inch of like whatever space that they're pouring into. It's like, yeah, you're never gonna fight that. It made more sense. But,
yeah, you also had like fans of the games and also fans of George Romero being interviewed in your documentary. You pulled JJ from Residents of Evil. You had Alex who wrote Itchy Tasty, and you had people from that supported the foundation. You went with it. You put your heart and soul into it, and it turned out, in my opinion, turned out to be a success. Because
I tried to get a little bit of everybody in there.
Yeah.
You know, like a little bit of different viewpoints, because, you know, JJ is like one of the largest Resident Evil channels.
Oh, yeah.
Alex Danielle, who is basically a scholar of the entire development history of Resident Evil. So he was very important to have in there. And then, you know, like you said, having people that are part of the foundation or work with George or work on the video games, like having Kenichi in there. And, Charlie, you know.
Yeah. And it's, you know, when interviewing is challenging sometimes, because you got to come up with the questions, you got to do your background research on every person you have. But with you had it set in stone already. You had the idea, you knew about each thing, and you put in two things at once. People that like George, and then people that liked Resident Evil. You put them together. And I thought that was visionary, really well done, to be honest. Because not only are you telling the story of how George was going to make a Resident Evil movie, but you were telling a documentary about his life, and then talked about Resident Evil, and then boom, went right into it. You know, your style for background on each thing, I thought was interesting. It was very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I could tell you, with your passion with it, you had a lot of fun working on it.
I mean, yeah, it was very challenging, but it was definitely fun to cover that material, put in like a lot of visual elements, and you know, we definitely had to design on like how we wanted the information to flow visually, just from bringing in all these different aspects from the games, and then we like mix it up with stuff that was more like George, and you know, we just really tried to create something that had its own look and feel and how it sounded, and you know, at the end of the day, it was just meant to be one giant love letter to Resident Evil and George Romero.
Yes.
Really all we wanted to do was just show like, this is why we love this stuff so much. And
exactly.
You know, we wanted to make it so that you could always watch it. You know, whether you agree with George's version or not, you could always sit down and watch it. It was kind of meant to be more so like this time capsule, you know. That way you're not reading articles all the time or just like hearing like theories and stuff, but you could like sit there and visually watch something as like a companion piece to like, whether you're reading a script or watching other YouTube videos, you have this companion piece, and you know, it's something that you can put on your shelf.
Yeah, like I think I got it when it was on sale, because it went on sale, and I was like, you know what, I got money, I'm buying it right now. That's literally what I did. And about a week later, I think it went to free, and I was like, oh man. And it had the ads and everything, but I was like, you know what?
That was something that they decided on their own.
I was just like
kind of I think it was part of like their business model. That
I just
a lot of their different films. So like they just emailed me and said, hey, by the way, you know, next week we're going to do this, and I was like, okay, well, I don't have the rights to it, you know, you do. So
you
already paid me like a bunch of money, so do what you need to do.
So when it comes to like people buying it, do you get some of the profit for it then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We get back end and stuff. So the European distributor is different from the North American one.
Mm-hmm.
So the North American one, we have like they gave us a bunch of money and then they gave us a back end deal. The European distributor, they were the first ones that we sold to, and it was just a lump sum. Like I won't give the amounts out there, but
no, you don't have to.
They paid us a pretty good price, and
okay.
But then they own it over there, so we don't get any back end.
Okay.
And I don't even know what's going on with that because they started to release it, and then I heard rumors like they did a merger with another company, so they stopped releasing it. And so there's like all these people in like UK and France and other places that are like, where the fuck is this documentary at? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I sold it. I didn't expect companies to buy it and release it. Like I didn't know when I first started making this it was going to turn into this. I was just trying to make a documentary. Like it would have probably went on YouTube, but these companies will come to me before I even finish the documentary wanting to release it. So,
oh my god,
I'd be foolish not to be like, oh yeah, you're going to pay me that much money for the right? Sure. But yeah, like the release over there, that's all in the European distributor to get it out there at that point.
Wow.
All we can do is that's just how it is.
Wow.
So same thing with like all the regions. Like it's just I think the Blu-ray in North America coming up is supposed to be region free. So I think once that happens, once I confirm it's region free, then I'll be able to push it out there. So people that haven't gotten a chance to even like have access to it, like you can just buy it here and then have it shipped to where you live. But yeah, I haven't. All I did was make a documentary. I've had so many people contact me asking about like the logistics behind, like, hey, when is it?
Okay.
Now, like that's the stuff I have no idea about. Like I literally just made it. So, but yeah, it's always been very interesting. Again, never expected a company to be interested in like buying it to release it on a professional level. So,
yeah. I mean, when I bought it, I was like, oh, it's on sale. I'll buy it. I want to watch it. It was on my watch list for like the longest time. And when I watched it, I was like, I didn't know all this shit was going on. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And you told the stuff that went on behind the scenes. What I didn't know was that I didn't know like Constantine was still using George's name. If I remember, it was in the documentary. I think.
It was mentioned as a rumor. Like that one, like we don't know who said it. Like they included it because it's interesting to see like that time period. Like here's all the rumors that were going on surrounding like what was going on with the film at that time.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that there was this allegation. There was never any concrete information, but there was an allegation that that Constantine was not letting people know. And it was also possible that they were thinking about maybe keeping him on as just the director.
Yeah.
But they were going around trying to shop for financing and were using his name. That was the allegation, that they were using his name to kind of coax investors. Be like, oh, we got George Romero attached. And I, of course, the allegation, they were saying that George was getting pretty pissed off about it because, as far as he was aware, like they weren't communicating to him. He took it to mean that he was fired, and so it's just one of those like really interesting things. Like, did it actually happen? We'll never know because George is dead, and Bernd Eichinger is dead, and I'm sure no one on the Constantine side will probably either admit to it or they may not even been around.
Movie studios, they're never going to.
We're talking about something that happened like 27 years ago. They're probably not even. There's probably very few people at Constantine that are still the same.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just one of those things. It's just another mystery. But,
yeah.
You know, we tried to be as complete as what we could telling that story.
Only with the information that you have given.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that we did include in there because, like, it started like the first script for the documentary was even longer. We included like talking about the state of video game movies, and we had like a bunch of stuff about, you know, the poor reception of Street Fighter and Mario and like all these other films at the times. And it's like, well, we don't really need to cover that. We could probably do like just a quick like, hey, there's these other films. And then we had like all the rumors at the time with like casting, and we cut all that out because I was like, you know, at the end of the day, that was just literally no one was ever cast for films. Like, there's no one cast for McElroy. There's no one cast for George Romero's films. You know, I'm sure they had ideas on who they wanted, but they never got into the point where they were ready to cast actors. You know, George was still writing the script. You know, So I mean, it was so I talked to Robbie and just said, you know, let's cut all this out because at this point, all we're doing is rewarding like fake news, basically.
Yeah,
like we're rewarding like people that just made up a bunch of shit, pass it off on the internet, like, oh yeah, Bruce Willis is attached, and I think at one time they were trying to claim Bruce Campbell was attached, and you know, it was like a who's who at that time, like Sarah Michelle Gellar. You know,
like, man,
whatever they wanted. You know, it was just all these like random rumors with no constant information. So I was like, I don't even want that in there because, like, you know, it's just it's like the precursor to like fan casting nowadays. You know, where like someone will make a list of like every A-list actor they want to play like each character.
I think
and it's kind of that back in the day.
I think at one point people wanted Jensen Ackles to be Leon. At one point,
that was going on for a long time.
I think it's still going on.
Yeah.
Like
but yeah, that kind of stuff that we eventually cut out. There were a few other things. I think there was a lot more with George's life, and we cut that down. And, I'm trying to think what else. I think there was a lot more regarding like where the movies went. We cut that down, and you know, I think we shot something like 34 hours of interviews. And
wow.
Yeah, we cut it all down. There's probably 4 or 5 interviews that we shot and didn't even make into the documentary. Yeah, so
that is 34 hours of interviewing. Holy fuck.
I mean,
man.
Some of them like just Norman England was like, I think, an hour and a half. And then like Jim Crut did an hour, Ben Rubin was like an hour. So like most of them were like an hour long, like each person. Some of them were an hour and a half.
Yeah,
and then, and then on top of that, I think we had like 10 hours of B-roll.
Yeah, like
hours and hours of B-roll of just the mansion and the like documents, and then probably a couple hours of like the soldier characters running around.
Yeah.
You know, and then we had to sit down and like, okay, how do we? I think the first cut of the documentary came in at like 4 hours, and it was like, whew, this is gonna be painful. Like, we had to start learning like how to like slim it up, and that's when we started like overlapping some stuff and like really trimming down the interviews until we got to. I think it was like 2.5 hours, and then we cut out another 30 minutes, another 30 minutes to get it down, and then I think the shortest it was ever at was like 110. It was 110 minutes, and then once I got it down there, I put like a couple things back in, and it ended up being like 115.
Yeah.
And then we lost it at that.
Okay. Yeah.
So I probably could have like slimmed it up a little bit more, because it is a pretty decent lengthy documentary.
Yeah.
The only thing I never really liked was the radio interview when it's talking about the scripts. I know quite a few people have said like that's the one part they don't really like, and it's like, yeah, there was actually something completely different there in the original cut, but it didn't get legally cleared, and based on the contract I had with the European distributor, we had like 3 days to replace it in order to meet the deadline. So I just asked for a favor and got like a audio only interview, and then we went back, replaced it, had to relayer in all the visuals, and then got the okay from the lawyers, and then we were able to send it over to the Europeans to meet the contractual deadline.
Yeah.
So I do plan on fixing that here in the future.
Yeah.
Because there is eventually there'll be a director's cut.
Ooh, I would love a copy of that one.
Yeah, we went back and got more information, more interviews, and I took a lot of the critiques of the documentary to heart. You know, like actually took notes on like what people were saying. And this is also allowing me to go back and kind of condense some areas where I felt like they were too long, replace a lot of the stuff I don't like, and then actually talk more, because I was also under a time restriction by the distributor. You know, it had to be a certain length, and I didn't want to lose a lot of the George stuff. And at the time, I was also foolish and thought, oh well, people aren't going to want to hear about the script for an hour because it's available online. And then it was like, oh well, that was stupid of me. I should have done an hour of script. So we're going to go back and actually just blow out the scenes where we're going to replace all the audio only stuff of the audio only interview talking about the scripts, and we're actually going to have some sit down interviews and really talk about like what those scripts were about and give more information. So that's where a lot of the extra length is going to come from. It's just expanding the areas, but then we're going to trim up a lot of the other sections and add in new material. So it's going to have a completely different feel, I think, for the directors. Something a little bit closer to what I wanted. Without it.
You know,
but I also got to be a little bit reasonable too. I don't think it's going to end up being 4 hours long. But,
no, like your documentary, like I could tell, like there were, from what you were telling me just now, you wanted to add more things into it, but you had that time limit to get it distributed and stuff and get it into everything. But yeah, like doing like a director's cut of it is a great idea. I actually support that one. I do. Because that way you're putting your heart more into the project.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always going to be attached to this. Even once we move on. I mean, this is basically the start of my career, and again, like what better way than to honor the person that inspired me? So you know, moving forward, like everything that's coming up is all because of George. You know, the fact that I'm getting an opportunity to make a video game movie with Faith the Unholy Trinity.
That's amazing.
You know, that's because of George. You know, at the end of the day, you know, the documentary was successful because it covered George Romero and getting to tell his story. And so at the end of the day, I owe everything to George Romero.
Yeah. The Godfather of horror. As it says on my shirt right now. That's the one I bought. But wow. That was a pretty interesting take on the documentary, how we just talked about it. Like it's very, very passionable. it's not your average documentary.
Yeah.
You're focusing on George Romero, then Resident Evil, and then you're also putting in the script that he had that some people don't even know about. Some of the fans don't even know about that stuff. And, you know, that's what makes documentaries so powerful.
Yeah.
It's
so this will probably be one of the few documentaries I ever made.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a traditional horror filmmaker,
Mm-hmm.
and it just so happened that I was working on this as sort of like a test, just test out some directing abilities. I never thought it was going to take 5 years to get released.
Yeah.
2, I never actually thought this was going to be my first project. I was actually planning on doing some short films, and I had some other scripts that I was waiting to put into production, and then it just so happened that it ramped up to a point where it became my obsession for quite a few years. So now that it's done, now I'm ready to, more or less move on and start the next thing. So
your inspiration is George. Everything, this documentary is for George.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the legacy that you put into it.
Yeah.
And, George Romero is always going to live on. Even after death, he's going to live on.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what, I know we're going to a different video game. Look what Call of Duty did with him, actually. If you know about that, they did a Call of Duty it was called Call of the Dead, right?
Yeah.
And they had George Romero as one of the tough zombies, and I was like, they got him to do it.
They did that with they did a like something to honor him in Dying Light. I think it was after he passed, where you could find like a whole thing where it was saying like George Romero never dies. And had like it was pretty neat. So I was like, that's really cool way along. So
yeah. Like all right, so we went in depth with the documentary. That was really interesting to learn the process and then what you want to do more with it. That's interesting. So let's jump back to 2 more questions about Resident Evil. Okay. What is your favorite moment in Resident Evil?
I'd probably just have to say the moment in Resident Evil 2 when you go around the corner and you first see the liquor scurrying across the window. I think that's a very iconic moment because it is the first instance of, if you started with Resident Evil 2, you were only fighting zombies up to that point, and it's the first instance of like, oh my god, there's something even more terrifying. So that's my favorite moment.
Okay. All right, let's go to George Romero. What's your favorite moment with one of George Romero's movies?
I don't know if I had to narrow it down. I know one of my favorite kills is always the death of Captain Rhodes, where like he literally just gets torn apart.
Is that the one where he gets split in half?
Yeah.
If I remember,
he literally gets split in half and all his guts spill out.
If I remember correctly, the person who like grabs his eyes, I think, isn't that Greg Nicotero? I'm just trying to remember because I know Greg Nicotero and Tom Savini worked on that together.
Yeah, that was like Greg's first project. Because he's also in there as one of the soldiers.
Yeah.
So it's I'm trying to think. I'm not sure of everyone that was a zombie in that scene, but I think Greg is actually in there as a zombie somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, that was like the big climax. Because George Demick it was like their last day of filming. So George Demick had turned 21 the last day of filming for the Wampum Underground, and then they were getting ready to go down to Florida to get all the exteriors. But they that was kind of like the last call to be like, hey, if you want to be a zombie, jump in here. So it's yeah, what a set to be on. And my connections to George Demick, like him and I have become close friends over the last few years. So,
Yeah.
That movie has a lot of connection because I know a lot of people that were involved in that production. So
Yeah.
But yeah, the Captain Rhodes death scene.
Okay.
Like that's a pretty iconic moment for me.
Let me think. With me, wow, George Romero. There's so many like iconic moments that he has in every film.
That's the thing is,
yeah,
like you're right. There's so many of them.
Yeah, I think
it's very hard to pick one.
Yeah, but like you said, a lot of people don't like watch Diary of the Dead. Like I think you at one point said that when I told you I liked it. That's my favorite one. I think in that one, I like Diary of the Dead because I think like my favorite moment for George Romero definitely actually was Diary of the Dead with the soldiers on the RV, actually.
Okay.
Because it shows that people are too far gone and think for them who are thinking for themselves rather than helping others.
Yeah, it's the constant we're always going to make the problem worse because we can't work together to solve the problem.
Exactly.
That's something that's kind of the constant theme in all his films.
That
we're always going to be worse than the monster we're trying to fight.
Exactly. It's that's what I that's why I like Diary of the Dead so much. It just shows like all of his movies either have just random people trying to survive or a military trying to survive, but it's actually film students trying to survive with a teacher. I thought that was interesting, taking college students in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, it was something different, and it was also his way of like sometimes it's not just commentary on society, but it's commentary on things that he wanted to talk about. And obviously, growing up in that sort of indie scene, that he wanted to discuss that. His film Night Riders is ultimately about him and his crew around the time after the success of Dawn of the Dead, and you can very much read into that. He is King Billy, and everyone's fighting between, hey, do we stay independent or do we go and sign contracts and become rich and famous? And there's a lot of subtext in his film Night Riders, and Diary of the Dead is kind of the subtext for that. I still think Bruiser has some subtext of his personal thoughts on Hollywood. I feel like that was, and to some extent, that Bruiser is sort of the sort of like a revenge film for like how he got screwed out of Resident Evil.
Yeah,
like it's very much about a guy who loses everything and takes his revenge on the executives of a company that he works for. And it's very interesting. Like I think they like steal his ideas, and it's like, that's very much like how everyone stole the zombie idea.
Yeah, and then I think another moment I love is Land of the Dead. I like that movie because it deals with the social norms too, like with bureaucracy and like people in power, but it also showed that the zombies are getting smarter.
Yeah, a lot of that was actually left over from the original script for Day of the Dead.
Wow.
Originally Day of the Dead was supposed to be like a 3+
Mhm.
hour epic zombie film. The film that he did make, it's sort of like a really, really condensed version. Originally, it was going to take place on an island, and it had,
Yeah.
like a guy who basically plays governor, and he has like
Mhm.
his rich society, and then like all the normal people are poor, and
Yeah.
they kind of live in like shacks and stuff. There
Mhm.
was going to be a lot more trained zombies that were soldiers.
Yep.
Like, it was very epic, very expensive, and
Yeah.
the only reason it did not get made is because the distributor came back and said, "You need to make it rated R. It can't be unrated." And George said, "Nope." They said, "Well, if you make it rated R, we'll give you $8 million so you can make this version.
Mhm.
If you still want it to be unrated, we're only going to give you half." And he just said, "Give me half." And he went off and made an unrated $4 million horror film.
Mhm.
So he just condensed it down.
Yep.
But,
Whatever George wanted,
yeah.
he wanted.
Yep.
That's who he was.
So,
If it never went his way, he always made it go his way.
mhm.
And learning that he was an independent film, like independent direct, like Night of the Living Dead was independently done, and then it became a big cult classic. And
Yeah.
if it wasn't for Night of the Living Dead, we wouldn't have the zombie shit we have today.
Or Resident Evil.
Exactly. In time for your documentary came out in time for the 30th in time,
Mhm.
which I thought was awesome. And so the last question that I'm going to ask you is, so basically, you talked about your favorite moments with George's movies, and then, Resident Evil itself. In your opinion, what was the saddest moment in Resident Evil history? Like game wise.
I mean, game-wise,
Yeah.
I'd probably say, I would say the saddest moment for me is knowing what the plans were originally after Resident Evil 2.
Mm-hmm.
And because of all the shifting, they lost a lot of people that worked on the original games. And I think
Mm-hmm.
almost everything released didn't even resemble what the plan was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything changed. The Resident Evil 4 that we got wasn't the same. Resident Evil 0 wasn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
Code Veronica wasn't the same.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 3 wasn't the same. Everything was utterly different than what they originally had on paper.
And then what Capcom did was, with the Resident Evil 4 we were supposed to get, they turned it into a whole different game.
Well, that was just one of them.
Yeah, the 3 point.
Resident Evil 4 went through like 4 different.
Yeah, it did.
4 or 5 different versions, and the original version wasn't even called Resident Evil 4.
Okay.
It was, they switched a bunch of shit around. Like, originally, Resident Evil 4, I think, was something else. Like, everything got switched up. It gets very confusing because of that, especially when some of the former employees start talking about the games that they worked on. The titles don't always match up, and that's how you get like shit that doesn't actually exist. Because for the longest time, people claimed there was a game called Resident Evil Dash, and it was like you went back to the mansion and there's plant monsters and all this other crazy shit.
What?
And yeah. Like, you can find information on it. It's
okay. I'm gonna have to.
Kind of but here's the thing: it doesn't actually exist. Like,
wow.
This was never a game. It was actually, they were talking about an early version of Resident Evil 3 that had Jill Valentine.
Okay.
Which wasn't known as Resident Evil 3 at the time. It was something else. And it was about Jill Valentine going back to the ruins of the mansion.
Mm-hmm.
Resident Evil 3, after Resident Evil 2, was a game with Hunk on a cargo ship, which was actually made they did something like 15 or 20% of the game, and then they scrapped it.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. It gets very confusing. And
Yeah.
then there was other shit that they were attributing to the Resident Evil Dash game that was actually for Resident Evil 1.5, which was Resident Evil 2 at the time. See what I mean? Like that whole era gets so confusing.
It is.
Some of the games have like multiple numbers. Like I forget what the one game was where they were like, yeah, it was originally Resident Evil 3. I think it actually was the what we know of as like the Resident Evil 4 project. I think originally it was Resident Evil 3, and then because they slotted something else in and changed something, this other project over here, it got pushed up, and it's like they're going to be Resident Evil 4 now, and that was at the time when it was what the version that became Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
And Resident Evil, and that project was actually a prequel. I don't think a lot of people realize that it was an original character. It wasn't Leon.
Oh my god! I never knew this shit. I am learning.
Yeah. I mean, again, I have connections with some of the collectors.
Yeah.
Actually have some of this information in design docs, and it's a lot of like instead of just like hearing the secondhand shit, like they'll actually just show me like the design doc, or like some sort of piece of information and be like, like it's not people making shit up. It's so you kind of like cut away all the bullshit. You just literally talk to someone who has the information and can actually answer questions, and you finally get to like fill in the gaps. What happened and what it was really supposed to be. So that whole era is probably, like, cause it's something that, because they changed all of that around that time period, right around like 2000, the whole series changed.
It did.
It's like never been the same since.
It did, and then
the story, gameplay, the lore, everything changed.
The one thing I'm never gonna forget was the trailer with Resident Evil 5. That is the one thing I'm never gonna forget. When it was just Chris in there, and they were putting in like that he was gonna do more hand-to-hand combat, all that shit, and then the final product they had to put in Sheva because people got pissed off.
Allegedly, like, she was always planned for it. It's just they only had an early build that only had Chris.
Oh, okay.
But there is a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the game and that changed direction.
Yeah.
Because one of the things they wanted to do was actually create an effect where when you go indoors, the screen darkens because for like a few seconds until your eyes adjust, and then when you go outside, you're blinded because of the sun for a few seconds.
Yeah,
and
isn't that
like that? So I don't think they ever did it.
Well, I think they did it in the trailer with Chris when he had his hand up at the sky.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is it's not in the final game.
Yeah.
And then they also had more of the T-Virus monsters planned.
Yeah.
For Resident Evil 5 that would be like evolved versions, but then they started cutting them all out because they're like, we can't just keep showing like the same old monsters. Like, here's another tyrant, because they already had the liquor. But they were going to try to.
You can only do so many enemies the same time. That's all you can do. And as soon as you run out of ideas, you got to be creative. Come on up with something new. And I think that's why in Resident Evil 4 they switched it to a parasite instead of a virus.
Yeah, I mean, there was just a different direction.
Yeah.
They I think toward the end there, I believe there was actually an interview once where Shinji actually said that the story for Resident Evil 4, not the game was basically done, but the actual story was like one of the very last things they even did. They were just cobbling together a game to get it out the door because the thing had been in development for like 6+ years. And they went through so many versions, so much money. And that's why he actually was brought back in, was just they were like, you need to come back and fix this because Shinji was not the director of 4, but he came back to get the thing on track.
Yeah.
And I believe that's part of the reason why they don't really have like a lot of backstory in 4.
Yeah.
Like you're just given like during the credits they show like what had happened in the village as like pictures.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just never had a lot of time to do the story.
I think like my saddest moment, honestly, to be honest, is when they don't bring back characters that people love.
I'm always the opposite of that because like again, if how much more can you do with like Chris or Leon or Jill? Like eventually, it's just this, like they keep repeating the same.
Yeah,
and someone did a post about Chris where they're like, where they were talking about Chris, and I said, listen, I am like a huge Chris Redfield fan.
Yeah.
But he is boring as shit anymore because he's been the exact same character for like 20 years, and it's just getting ridiculous. Like, let do one more game, one more game with all of them, and then let them retire.
Yeah,
because it's that like Leon is in his 50s now.
Yeah,
Chris is in his late 50s. Barry's like
60s,
70 years old.
Yeah, 70s or 60s. Yeah,
like it's getting to the point where like
that's
like keep those characters for like side games where you can go back and be like, here's what Leon did in like 2002 or whatever.
Yeah, and then
instead of just making like because they don't even feel like the old characters anymore.
No, they changed a lot,
and they're already like in the movies and stuff. Like I want the series to keep evolving.
Yeah, that's what
I looks really interesting.
Yeah, so. the reason why I'm excited for 9 is because they're bringing in a character we haven't heard from since literally an article from 7, which is Alyssa Ashcroft. But now we find out she's dead. Somebody murdered her, and then you're playing as her daughter.
Yep.
I think that's the most perfect thing in the world. I was just like, Ashcroft. And then when I saw Alyssa, I was like, oh, you sons of bitches. Oh, you. And I like how that trailer didn't show a lot. So, I mean...
So I'm excited. I'm excited for the future.
Me too.
I hope that's how every game's going to be. Where I don't want it to just be, oh well, here's the next Leon Kennedy game. Here's the next, and then the next one after that is like, look, it's Chris Redfield. And I don't want that.
There's characters.
I want to be surprised.
There's characters that I want to come back. That's what I was trying to say. The ones that they get rid of because they were in one game and that's it. I want some of those characters to come back.
I don't know. Like, I feel like they're reaching at that point. Like, who can you really like? Barry. They've already established like Barry doesn't want anything to do with this shit. He has a family.
Yeah,
he's like retired, and they brought him back one time because his daughter got kidnapped.
And then he adopted another daughter.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, how many times is his daughter gonna have to get kidnapped or
like
come back? Like it's gonna get dumb after a while.
Like,
same thing with, it's like Carlos has no attachment to this universe.
Yeah, he was just one and done.
He was doing, he just wanted to get out of the city. He did that. He got a story. Billy is an escaped convict. He just wanted to get out of the mountains.
Yeah.
And he may or may not have done that. He probably died in the forest. But I mean, a lot of the side characters, like if they just keep bringing everyone back, then it's kind of like the Star Wars effect. They kept bringing back like the most random shit, and it started making the universe feel like so small. It's like, how is it that this entire galaxy is so interconnected?
Yeah.
Like it's a galaxy, but you're making it feel like it's the size of a small town. And I hate that about Star Wars anymore because
Mm-hmm.
like connected to each other to the
Yeah.
point where it's just boring. It's boring. There's nothing. You don't really get a lot of new ideas, and that's what I don't want to happen to Resident Evil. Like if you just keep regurgitating the same characters and ideas, like, and again, I understand like fans are going to have their opinions on what they want to see in the series,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think that a lot of stuff should be abandoned. Like I don't want to see the legacy characters continue to be the protagonists
Yeah.
in sequels. But I'm cool with side games because there's plenty of shit that they were doing that
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been filled in yet. And
Yeah.
like that's a great way of keeping them in their prime that the fans know them for. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see a 70-year-old Leon Kennedy.
Oh God, yeah, that'd be great.
Keep him in like when he was in his 20s and 30s.
Mhm.
The age where he's most well loved. And you can have him on some other mission.
Yeah. Or
I'm cool with games that could go back to the early days or even more prequel and show like if you want a game that has zombies and like some of the more iconic monsters from the older titles, that's a good way to do it. But I don't want Resident Evil 10 to be Umbrella again.
No.
Zombies.
No.
I like don't keep repeating the shit because it's going to stagnate, and that was part of
Yep.
the problem with the early 2000s was they constantly were regurgitating the same shit over and over.
Mm-hmm.
It was like you knew every game was going to have zombies, zombie dogs, spiders, crows, and that's like the majority of the enemies in the game. So right there was like, okay, well, you just made the game boring, and it just started to get to the point where like the controls were getting stagnant.
Yeah.
The stories were stagnating. Like a lot of the game, it just wasn't appealing to a lot of fans at that time, and it was because of Resident Evil 4 that the series was able to evolve and kind of bring in new fans. So as much as I love the older games, like the older games really did start to stagnate because they were not changing. They were just kind of, spinning their wheels trying to figure out, like, how do we keep this series going? And, I think now Capcom's on to a good idea. Like, every few years, we're going to, like, sort of rebrand ourselves. It's something new, new characters, new settings. So it's like, but I feel very excited for what the future is going to be.
Yep, me too. Well, I think that's about to wrap it up. Brandon, thank you very much for doing this. I know I said we were going to do this for a half hour, but it turned into 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like you said, interviews sometimes do that. But, you gave in a lot of detail. You were great. But yeah, if you guys want to be interviewed, just like Brandon was, just contact me, and then we'll work out something from there. Brandon, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye, everybody.